One of the biggest factors that determines how well you age is not your genes, but how well you live. Not convinced? A study published in 2009 in the British Medical Journal of 20,000 British folks shows that you can cut your risk of having a stroke in half by doing the following 4 things: being active for 30 minutes a day, eating 5 daily servings of fruit and vegetables, and avoiding cigarettes and excess alcohol. While those are some of the obvious steps you can take to age well, researchers have discovered that centenarians tend to share certain traits in how they eat, move about, and deal with stress, the sorts of things we can emulate to improve our own aging process. Of course, getting to age 100 is enormously more likely if your parents did. Recent research suggests that centenarians are 20 times as likely as the average person to have at least one long-lived relative. Still, Thomas Perls, who studies the century-plus set at Boston University School of Medicine, believes that assuming you've sidestepped genes for truly fatal diseases like Huntington's, there's nothing stopping you from living independently well into your 90s. Heck, if your parents and grandparents were heavy smokers, they might have died prematurely without ever reaching their true potential lifespan. So go ahead and shoot for those triple digits. Follow these 11 habits and check out Perls' lifetime risk calculator to see how long you can expect to live. 1. Don't retire. Evidence shows that in societies where people stop working abruptly, the incidence of obesity and chronic disease skyrockets after retirement, says Luigi Ferrucci, director of the Baltimore Longitudinal Study of Aging. The Chianti region of Italy, which has a high percentage of centenarians, has a different take on leisure time. After people retire from their jobs, they spend most of the day working on their little farm, cultivating grapes or vegetables, he says. They're never really inactive. Farming isn't for you. Volunteer as a docent at your local art museum or join the Experience Corps, a program offered in 19 cities that places senior volunteers in urban public elementary schools for about 15 hours a week. 2. Floss every day. That may help keep your arteries healthy. A 2008 New York University study showed that daily flossing reduced the amount of gum disease-causing bacteria in the mouth. This bacteria is thought to enter the bloodstream and trigger inflammation in the arteries, a major risk factor for heart disease. Other research has shown that those who have high amounts of bacteria in their mouth are more likely to have thickening in their arteries, another sign of heart disease. I really do think people should floss twice a day to get the biggest life expectancy benefits, says Perls. It's long been clear that cancer is a disease of aging. While children and younger adults are of course afflicted by certain types of the disease, the vast majority of cases occur in people over 50. But from that simple observation, researchers are just beginning to tease out the intricate connections between the biological processes driving both the disease and the aging process. Though the research is in early days, they're discovering how the two may be linked, and even how the forces of evolution may have produced a trade-off: the ability to protect against cancer at the expense of a faster aging. Judith Campisi, a research scientist at the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory and the Buck Institute for Age Research, sees the relationship 2 ways. First, she says, the same forces that damage our genes likely drive both cancer and aging. For example, oxidative stress, a type of DNA damage caused by free radicals and other molecules, has been associated with both processes, says Stephen Osted, a biologist at the Barshop Institute for Longevity and Aging Studies at the University of Texas Health Science Center. Osted is also deputy director of research at the American Federation for Aging Research, which funds studies on aging and age-related diseases. Any biological processes that protect against oxidative stress and other forms of DNA damage are unequivocal good guys, says Campisi. They protect against cancer, protect the genome, and protect longevity. But there's a second, more complex way to view the relationship between aging and cancer. The working hypothesis, explains Campisi, is that cancer was a problem that evolution had to solve very early on when an organism evolved the ability to regenerate and repair tissue. Cancer is characterized by cells dividing wildly, with no breaks. If a cell can't divide, it can't become cancerous. One solution that evolved a whole class of naturally occurring tumor suppressor molecules that can disable cells in danger of going haywire. They do it either by telling the cell to kill itself through a process called apoptosis or by simply turning off the potentially dangerous cell's ability to divide, a process called senescence. That process, Campisi says, helps hold off cancer in our reproductive years. But there's a trade-off. The problem is that those senescent cells, while they have lost their ability to divide out of control, may trigger inflammation in nearby cells and tissues, and inflammation is linked with a host of age-related disease, including late-life cancers. Experiments in mice show that goosing one important tumor suppressor gene, p53, so it's a little bit activated all the time, does certainly hold off cancer. But the mice age prematurely. It has been possible to regulate the action of p53 in a kind of Goldilocks mode, not too much, not too little, and that produces mice that are both tumor-free and don't age prematurely, says Campisi. While it sounds great, that's easy to do in mice, but difficult to do in people, she says. Some other possible tactics include figuring out why the senescent cells are secreting molecules that promote the dangerous inflammation and whether suppressing that secretion would help. Or, she says, maybe there's a way to get rid of the senescent cells entirely. Another frontier of research involving both aging and cancer, telomeres, the lasso-like piece of DNA that protects the end of a chromosome. Over time, as a cell divides, its telomeres get shorter and shorter until each is too short to form a lasso loop. The cell then enters senescence, explains Jack Griffith, a professor of microbiology and immunology at the Lineberger Cancer Center of the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. An enzyme called telomerase restores these fraying ends in egg and sperm cells, as well as in most cancer cells. So, why not knock out telomerase in the body in order to fight cancer? Well, about 15% of tumors don't depend on telomerase, they use other methods to keep their DNA ends from fraying. And blocking telomerase could mean other cancers switch to that route, too. So there's no easy, universal fix. Research into the complex of cancer and aging is far from finding a solution to either. But what scientists are learning points to the idea that these kinds of trade-offs and conundrums are everywhere, says Osted. A remedy for one problem may aggravate the other, which illustrates the need to communicate about tackling both problems. There's a lot more talk than there used to be between cancer and aging researchers, he says. But there should be more. 3. Move around. Exercise is the only real fountain of youth that exists, says Jay Olshansky, a professor of medicine and aging researcher at the University of Illinois at Chicago. It's like the oil and lube job for your car. You don't have to do it, but your car will definitely run better. Study after study has documented the benefits of exercise to improve your mood, mental acuity, balance, muscle mass, and bones. And the benefits kick in immediately after your first workout, Olshansky adds. Don't worry if you're not a gym rat. Those who see the biggest payoffs are the ones who go from doing nothing to simply walking around the neighborhood or local mall for about 30 minutes a day. Building muscle with resistance training is also ideal, but yoga classes can give you similar strength training effects if you're not into weightlifting. 4. Eat a fiber-rich cereal for breakfast. Getting a serving of whole grains, especially in the morning, appears to help older folks maintain stable blood sugar levels throughout the day, according to a recent study conducted by Ferrucci and his colleagues. Those who do this have a lower incidence of diabetes, a known accelerator of aging, he says. Hear fiber and you probably think of bran cereal, which doesn't exactly make you salivate. But new research suggests more fiber could equal more years. Analyzing data from nearly 400,000 men and women ages 50 to 71, researchers found that those who consumed the most fiber were 22% less likely to die from any cause during the 9 years they were studied. Men were 24 to 56% and women 34 to 59% less likely to die of heart and infectious or respiratory diseases, according to findings from the National Institutes of Health's AARP Diet and Health Study, published today in the Archives of Internal Medicine. Why fiber reduces the risk of early death is unclear. Perhaps it's because fiber lowers levels of bad LDL cholesterol, improves blood glucose levels, reduces inflammation, and binds to potential cancer-causing agents, helping to flush them out of the body, says lead author Yiking Park, a staff scientist at the National Cancer Institute. What is clear, however, is that participants only benefited when fiber came from grains like oatmeal, cornmeal, and brown rice. Fiber from fruits, vegetables, and beans had no impact on death risk. Whole grains are rich sources of fiber, but also good sources of vitamins, minerals, and other phytochemicals that may provide health benefits, Park says. And grains have powerful antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties, another reason researchers say grain fiber is beneficial. Clearly, all fibers are not created equal, cautions James Anderson, an endocrinologist at the University of Kentucky Lexington. Different fibers have different properties. And while the latest study emphasizes grain fiber, past studies have found that fiber from fruits and vegetables can benefit heart health. Here's a field guide to fiber sources. Soluble fiber, foods high in soluble fiber, so-called because of its ability to dissolve readily in liquids, include oat bran, oatmeal, beans, peas, rice bran, barley, citrus fruits, strawberries, and apple pulp, according to the American Heart Association. Soluble fibers have been linked to lower levels of bad cholesterol. Viscous fibers found in foods like oat bran and beans seem to work particularly well because they form a gel in the gut that slows down fat formation and absorption, says Joanne Slavin, a professor of food science and nutrition at the University of Minnesota and author of the American Dietetic Association's 2008 position paper on dietary fiber. The Food and Drug Administration allows heart disease health claims for oats, barley, and psyllium, the fiber found in Metamucil. Soluble fibers also regulate blood glucose levels, says Anderson. But most soluble fibers, except psyllium, don't have the laxative effects that many people associate with fiber, so don't rely on them for that purpose. 5. Get at least 6 hours of shut-eye. Instead of skimping on sleep, to add more hours to your day, get more to add years to your life. Sleep is one of the most important functions that our body uses to regulate and heal cells, says Ferrucci. We've calculated that the minimum amount of sleep that older people need to get those healing REM phases is about 6 hours. Those who reach the century mark make sleep a top priority. 6. Consume whole foods, not supplements. Strong evidence suggests that people who have high blood levels of certain nutrients, selenium, beta-carotene, vitamin C and D, age much better and have a slower rate of cognitive decline. Unfortunately, there's no evidence that taking pills with these nutrients provides those anti-aging benefits. There are more than 200 different carotenoids and 200 different flavonoids in a single tomato, points out Ferrucci. And these chemicals can all have complex interactions that foster health beyond the single nutrients we know about like lycopene or vitamin C. Avoid nutrient-lacking white foods, breads, flour, sugar and go for all those colorful fruits and vegetables and dark whole grain breads and cereals with their host of hidden nutrients. 7. Be less neurotic. It may work for Woody Allen, who infuses his worries with a healthy dose of humor, but the rest of us neurotics may want to find a new way to deal with stress. We have a new study coming out that shows that centenarians tend not to internalize things or dwell on their troubles, says Perls. They are great at rolling with the punches. If this inborn trait is hard to overcome, find better ways to manage when you're stressed. Yoga, exercise, meditation, tai chi, or just deep breathing for a few moments are all good. Ruminating, eating chips in front of the TV, binge drinking? Bad, very bad. 8. Live like a Seventh-day Adventist. Americans who define themselves as Seventh-day Adventists have an average life expectancy of 89, about a decade longer than the average American. One of the basic tenets of the religion is that it's important to cherish the body that's on loan from God, which means no smoking, alcohol abuse, or overindulging in sweets. Followers typically stick to a vegetarian diet based on fruits, vegetables, beans, and nuts, and get plenty of exercise. They're also very focused on family and community. 9. Be a creature of habit. Centenarians tend to live by strict routines, says Olshansky, eating the same kind of diet and doing the same kinds of activities their whole lives. Going to bed and waking up at the same time each day is another good habit to keep your body in a steady equilibrium that can be easily disrupted as you get on in years. Your physiology becomes frailer when you get older, explains Ferrucci, and it's harder for your body to bounce back if you, say, miss a few hours of sleep one night or drink too much alcohol. This can weaken immune defenses, leaving you more susceptible to circulating flu viruses or bacterial infections. 10. Stay connected. Having regular social contacts with friends and loved ones is key to avoiding depression, which can lead to premature death, something that's particularly prevalent in elderly widows and widowers. Some psychologists even think that one of the biggest benefits elderly folks get from exercise is the strong social interactions that come from walking with a buddy or taking a group exercise class. Having a daily connection with a close friend or family member gives old